Okay. We're streaming. Matt.
Nice.
I've been up since like 8 p.m. I think last night or something.
Jesus.
Yeah, dude, it's not been great. Like, but here's the thing. Here's the thing that makes it slightly okay. The
Yep.
whole like that whole day I was asleep. So I think I slept for like 15 hours or some bullshit. I was expecting people to show up and to clean up my house. But then I got a text saying, "Oh yeah, I'm feeling a bit sick, so I'm canceling this thing." And I was like, "All right, sweet." And then I ended up just going back to sleep, and then
Yep.
just sleeping forever. And part of me was like, "Yo, I can't. I need to get this video done, so I'm gonna stay up until the stream and just edit the thing." And I was doing that, so that was a. I'm not feeling great, but at the moment, it
You'll
is
soldier through.
okay. Yeah, anyway, how you been doing as I check on the links to make sure everything is up and running? Matt, did you hear that?
Look, definitely, I definitely haven't been up for nearly 24 hours straight. So that's a plus. I've still got that little bit of a COVID cough, which is obnoxious. Especially because Canberra is so cold at the moment. I think it's making it worse, but not too bad. It has been interesting though in Australia at the moment with so many people being infected with COVID, and we're now seeing that COVID this year will be the leading cause of Australian deaths. We're up to 10,000 total, and so people are now discussing like, do we bring back mandates and things like that? It's an interesting question, but I think honestly, if you're going to wear a mask, you're wearing one right now. I am. I know you are. If you're not wearing a mask, you're not wearing one. And I don't think a mandate is going to change that, honestly. But it is interesting to see the debate rage on. I think I'm just still suffering through post-traumatic stress after the last lot of protesters came to Canberra, and
Oh,
any excuse for them to come back is not something I'm particularly keen to see.
oh shit. Okay, look, there's a trigger warning that I'm gonna give you right now, Matt. That might come up in the stream later.
Oh God.
Look, I'm having a lot of trouble for whatever reason getting any of this shit uh on YouTube going. I think we're live.
Where the sound's definitely coming through, I believe.
Yeah, I just want the control room thing going on, but it's like it's having a lot of trouble bringing that up. But anyway, we're just gonna push ahead. And yeah, welcome everyone to the Modern Meltdown.
We got a fun story to start with today, though.
We've got a lot of there's been a lot that's been happening. So first, Matt, I think you said we have to start with this.
I want to
God damn it,
start
I keep pressing the
happy.
wrong
I
goddamn
want to
button.
start happy.
Okay, so you might need to be quiet for this to hear it because this audio that I got from this person it's a bit low. So I'm gonna boost it up here. Hopefully we'll. But yeah, this is I think this is a Tory MP being interviewed, or just a journalist. It's probably just a journalist for Sky News being interviewed about what's been going on after Boris Johnson resigned. And there were some shenanigans happening behind the scenes, and we're gonna listen into that right now.
At this time. So I guess my question to you this morning is, do you accept that Boris Johnson can carry on as a caretaker leader until the autumn, or do you think that he does actually need to step aside and let someone else do that?
Well, I think there are a couple of things. Firstly, we need to make sure that we keep the basic functions of government going. That's really important. There are, for example, no ministers in DfE at the moment. That needs to be sorted out. Secondly, I think we need to try and select a new leader as quickly as we reasonably can.
You can tell he keeps glancing.
We need to make sure we make the correct choice, but we should do it in a reasonably quick time. In terms of Boris staying on, the convention is that the outgoing Prime Minister does carry on. That's what happened when Theresa May left office, is what happened when David Cameron left office. And given that, as we just heard, the caretaker Prime Minister can't really introduce any new policy or any significant new legislation, I don't really see any major problem, but I haven't really given it deep thought, to be honest.
Dude, I think he did fairly well, that guy, not to be distracted. Because, okay, so that music wasn't put on top of the stream, on top of that video. That was being done...
So, do you
explain?
remember 90s heartthrob Hugh Grant, Tommy?
Yes, I do.
So, Hugh Grant thought it would be fucking hilarious if the protesters, because there's been a substantial amount of protesters around the area over the last couple of weeks as Boris Johnson has been getting closer and closer to being outed. A lot of people consider Boris Johnson to be the triumvirate of stupid that we've had leading Western countries over the last couple of years, and the triumvirate includes Donald Trump, Scott Morrison, and Boris Johnson. So he was the last of the triumvirate to fall. So just recently he resigned as the leader of the British Parliament. And so Hugh Grant said to the protesters who had been there, hey, wouldn't it be funny if every time a Tory came out to have a chat about what's going on, you guys play yakety sax in the background, which is also been used in the Benny Hill theme song. Now, Benny Hill was a comedy skit show back in the day. If you've ever seen, you've most likely seen the Benny Hill show parodied. Whenever you see a bunch of ladies in lingerie running around in a circle really quickly, that's usually the Benny Hill parody angle. So they've been playing that nonstop. Every time a Tory comes out to speak to the media, they've got yakety sax going on in the background, obviously being the implication that this is all just a lot of buffoonery, and so they need an appropriate soundtrack. I love it. You know, it's a scary world out there, so anything that makes me smile is definitely going to get my thumbs up, and I thought that was great. I just love it.
Yeah, and so this is the guy. So he was on Twitter. So this is probably that same interview from a different perspective. Excellent.
And so this is the thing now, you know, with new technology, we find newer and better ways to shitstir politicians, and I think that's absolutely fucking wonderful. I'd like to think that in at least in some Western countries, we still are more than happy to take the absolute piss out of our politicians. America, not so much, but definitely, you know, Britain, UK, Canada. You don't have to do it in New Zealand because they love Jacinda Ardern, and rightfully so. No one needs to take the piss out of Jacinda Ardern. She's lovely. But it is, you know, it is that sort of tradition, especially like, you know, I think the British and Australian senses of humor are so aligned that this really makes sense to us as well.
Yeah.
It's, you know, take the piss out of these people. They deserve it. If you take the piss out of them, it keeps them where they need to be, which is humble and quiet. Otherwise, you end up with a Barnaby Joyce. No one wants that.
Yeah.
No one needs that in their life.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's also good to see, like, when you like use comedy is like a tool to sort of judge character as well. And what you'll see is if you make fun of someone like, say, Anthony Albanese, our prime minister, he's going to take the jabs much better than someone like Scott Morrison, because he's
absolutely
a good dude. And he was on things like Hard Quiz with Tom Gleeson, and he had this like tandem bike ride with Briggsy, where Briggsy was like, oh yeah, everyone in a politician is like a closet asshole, and then Anthony Albanese said closet, assuming that everyone's basically an asshole. Like he basically just, you know, made fun of himself. But I want to keep on going with this Boris Johnson stuff, because it's actually a big deal, as I showed in this comic here. Rupert's Diner, all out of space. It's completely divorced from reality, and it's Scott Morrison, Donald Trump, and Boris Johnson in here, and they're not having a doesn't seem like they're having a great time in there. And there's this other YouTube video that I'll play from, I think this guy's a comedian. It's quite good. It's both.
Yeah, he
quite
is.
funny.
He is. His first video went viral a few years ago because people thought it was real. They actually thought it was a reporter having some sort of mental breakdown during his broadcast. But yes, he is a comedian, and he does these very, very straight bits where he pretends to be a news anchor, and he's very, very good.
Yeah. And like this all seems to be done in one take as well. So like I'm always impressed by the performance as well. But yeah, I'll play it and be entertained.
He's gone. He's fucked off then. He's resigned. Okay, so he's resigned, but he hasn't fucked off. Okay. Fucking, I mean, what do we have to do? Wait for another few months whilst he takes the wallpaper down? I'm loving this. What an exit. The Prime Minister forgot that his whip was a sexual predator. No answer to that one. No answer, no humility, no meaningful apology. For days, just more Dickensian twaddle and a little reshuffle. Not so much reshuffling deck chairs on the Titanic, more reshuffling cat shit on a litter tray. And the manner of his departure should tell you everything you need to know. No dignity, just desperation and delusion and a despotic disposal to cling to power, no matter the harm to our country. A Tory party facing the inevitable truth that they have been complicit in enabling one of the most dangerously incompetent and untrustworthy, selfish individuals ever to have occupied number 10 for as long as they have. And what's beautiful is it was the lying that got him in the end. He leaves in disgrace, as well he should, having exposed himself once and for all for what we always knew him to be. Not a statesman, but a sad little liar. A Shakespearean tragedy written by monkeys on typewriters. A Prime Minister who is as adept at lying at the dispatch box as he is to his string of mistresses. Every marriage Boris has had has ended when he fucked someone else and got them pregnant. That's who he is. Lies on top of lies on top of lies. He lies and gets people to lie on his behalf, and then lies about the lying. And when he runs out of lies, he can always rely on the incompetence card. I forgot, I can't remember. I don't understand what the word party means. My willy just ended up inside my secretary. Oh, I forgot that he's a renowned sex pest. Essentially, a man who would rather pretend to be stupid than admit his mistakes, which of course makes him a coward. A desperate, sad, talentless flag shagger who is so blatant in his dishonesty that when accused of lying to Parliament, he simply tries to change the rules to make it okay to lie to Parliament. Who, when his own ethics advisors resign in disgust at his complete lack of ethics, scraps the role of ethics advisor altogether, which proves his complete lack of ethics. But the devastating cries over the last few days from the Tory party of enough is enough and one step too far are coming from the same people who have sat and watched him take a flamethrower to their party and our constitution for 3 fucking years. Fuck up after fuck up, lie after lie. And they were thinking what? Oh, he'll get better in a minute. All of them talking about trust and integrity. If you cared so much about trust and integrity, then why the fuck did you put Boris Johnson in number 10 in the first place? All of the reasons they're getting rid of him now, lack of leadership, lack of morals, lack of integrity, lack of truth, all these traits have been in plain sight for years. His CV reads like a demon's resume. These noble cabinet ministers all falling on their swords. These are the fuckers that enabled Boris to be there in the first place. And just look at what he's achieved. Trust in politics at a lower ebb than that time President Trump told Americans to drink bleach. A government with a complete absence of ethics, morals, direction, or ideas. A ministerial code in the bin. An oven-ready Brexit deal that even Boris admits is unworkable. A COVID response that has been found to be criminally negligent. A United Kingdom inches away from complete devolution. an economy in tatters, a recession on the way, a health service barely fit for purpose, a country on the verge of a national strike, a man who took an 80-seat majority and just spaffed it up the wall in the name of hubris and ambition, destroying his party's reputation and leaving the UK ungovernable. What a legacy. Chaos. He leaves office the most hated man in his party and his country. And even though he's resigned, he's still fucking there. Just fuck off and we'll take our chances with the next useless posh sliver of bollock skin who gets to shag their mistress in the £50,000 floral wallpapered gin palace and factory of lies that Number 10 has become under Boris Johnson. Okay, well, we're still waiting to get a clearer picture as to the timeline as to the Prime Minister's departure, but it is safe to say that there are signs.
I love that there's like this couple that's here, and the whole time none of them like seem to like. He'd obviously be audible from that distance. It's like, how do you not even look the once at this guy that's just going off? I don't understand it, but look,
because they're British. They're British. They're a little bit different.
It's just a common occurrence. People just going off like that. But,
yeah, look, I'm like I was saying to you earlier, I'm actually looking quite forward to jetting off to London at sometime in the very near future. It's important to discuss the ramifications of Boris Johnson's leadership and what the grander implications are going to be for Britain. Boris Johnson, of course, was one of the architects for Brexit, which will become one of the biggest economic disasters that the modern British people will ever see. Very, very sadly, so people have thrown around the term self-inflicted. I don't think it's self-inflicted. It's not self-inflicted when people in power who know what they're doing manipulate a general population that is overworked, overtired, doesn't understand the issue, doesn't have financial degrees, and then is just constantly bombarded by social media propaganda, which is exactly what happened with Brexit. Which I believe is, it's mass manipulation. It's no different to what a cult leader would do to a population. And that's what the Tories did and the architects of Brexit did to the British population. It's not the lorry driver's fault that he was tricked into this. It's the fact that these people who are in positions of power, backed by Rupert Murdoch Media, was allowed to do this to these people. So I don't blame the British people for Brexit. I do blame these assholes for Brexit. Boris Johnson is one of those people. The timeline of it all is quite simply the referendum comes out because James Cameron is a feckless fucker. Puts it out to the people. Not even a majority of British people vote on it. Then people are confused by it. And then Boris Johnson manages to slime his way into the leadership. After obviously Theresa May is also kicked out, so he slimes his way in there with which is what he's always wanted to do. The British people have been confused, especially by his manner, and his hair is a bit tousled, and he kind of looks like a British version of Donald Trump. And because of that, people go, "Oh, he's an everyman," but he wasn't an everyman. He just cultivated this image in order to trick people into thinking he wasn't a charlatan. It's a wolf in sheep's clothing. That's exactly what he was. So what he's going to leave Britain in is a economic situation where they don't have the ability to trade freely with their neighbors. They don't have the ability to have skill sharing with their neighbors. They're going to be paying tariffs through the fucking asshole because the rest of Europe is going to punish them for what has happened. They're not going to make it easy to trade with them because their opinion is, and I think this is a justified opinion, the European Union says, well, they're not willing to play by our collective rules here that we have in this free trade agreement. So why the fuck are we going to make it easy for them so that they still get all the benefits of being a European trading partner, but they don't have to comply with the rules that we've all agreed to collectively? So the European Union has no interest in helping the British people. So the lorry driver who crosses the border into Paris every day to drop off his delivery and pick up, he's now paying extra tariffs, making it harder to run his business. Product cost, I mean, this is around the world, but especially in Britain, is now going through the roof because inflation is going to just continue to grow there because they are having to pay more on goods and services. Their healthcare system is in tatters because suddenly a bunch of skilled migrant labor that was helping to prop up their public health system and now less likely to go to Britain because it is more difficult. On top of that, it also empowered right-wing nutbags. It empowered racists. So Britain has been absolutely left in tatters. While you've got a group of elderly British people and younger British people who have been convinced that everything was great just after that very slight period after the Blitz, and they should all go back to 1945. And the architects of this doomsday scenario that's been created for the British people was idiots like fucking Boris Johnson. I mean, in a justified work, they would have a justified world. They would have taken him out to
Piccadilly?
Piccadilly. Thank you, Tommy. Piccadilly Circus and hung the bastard. And the suffering that he has now caused, that is going to be felt for generations in Britain, is disgusting. Like, it's the exact same situation that the American people are now facing due to the absolute stacking of the Supreme Court. While everyone turned around and was like, oh, it's Donald Trump. What damage are they going to do? Oh, it's Boris Johnson. What damage are they going to do? There are lasting ramifications for this stupidity, and people are going to be feeling it for generations. It's going to be economic, and it's going to be, the empowering of very dangerous white-wing nutbags, and it's going to be, these social implications that are going to last with people for a long, long time. So I'm glad to see Boris Johnson gone. Unfortunately, his stoogery is going to last a lifetime.
Yeah, so one of the concerns is that this might actually be bad for the Labour Party in the UK. Not that I haven't heard much, but I don't think Keir Starmer is that left-wing, but anything is better than the Tories, so, you still got to take that. But because Boris Johnson is not going to be contesting the next election, they might have someone with less baggage who is just as shit fronting for the Conservatives, and then therefore that might save them in the election. I hope it doesn't, but there is a chance of that happening.
I think that's a justified concern because we've just been through that, Tommy, over the last 9 years. Abbott was a complete right-wing nutbag. He was ineffectual. He was a waste of everyone's time, and he did nothing but take our country backwards. So Australians got sick of him very, very quickly. But what happened is when there was the coup, Malcolm Turnbull was able to come in, and that prolonged the conservative ownership of the Australian political system for the next 9 years. Because what will happen most likely in Britain, if it follows what's happened here in Australia, is you will see a more likable conservative get in, while the right wing still sits in their chamber and they're still happy as fuck. And then they will slowly get rid of that person. They'll bring in even someone who's more feckless, who's more ineffectual than Boris Johnson, completely obliterate the party. And then the British people will, for lack of any option, will then have to go and hopefully vote in someone like we have with Anthony Albanese. That's if their system mimics ours. I hope it doesn't. But like you said, Tommy, they probably really don't have many great options regardless of where they vote at the moment.
Yeah. I think the Conservatives have been in government for a long time, though. So it might be a similar situation to us here, where we've had 9 years of coalition rule, and then we're like, you know what? Fuck this. Let's get them out, regardless of whether it's a new person or not or whatever. And that might be the same, because it was Cameron to Theresa May to Johnson, right? They haven't had anyone else for But then again, like Boris Johnson was
And
elected with a
Blair, I
massive
believe
majority.
Blair was conservative as well. So you went Tony Blair, Cameron, May, and then Boris Johnson.
Yeah. So
Who-
in
who,
a lot of the local
Sorry, go
elections
ahead.
and things like that, yeah. In a lot of the local elections and things like that, it seems like Labour have been polling way better than they normally would. And on the two-party preferred right now, I think I saw someone they're 10 points ahead. So that's a wider margin than in Australia, I think. So in the general election, if that holds, hopefully we'll see a change of government.
I mean, look, I would like to see the world move towards more progressive leadership. I think it's desperately needed. We need more Anthony Albanese's. We need more Jacinda Ardern's out there leading the countries. Obviously, you do have there is hope out there. Like I think a lot of people will fall into hopelessness, especially when they look at the situation in America. It's not as it could be far worse. I think the scales are balancing towards the opposite end because you do have a more progressive government in Germany. Obviously, Macron in France is more of a centrist.
One
We
thing
have
to add, Matt, real quick, just add to your France thing. So
Yep.
Macron got in, and we would have liked more leftists, but what happened was in the parliamentary elections, in France happened after that, and the two left parties were like, okay, us fighting against each other because it's first past the post. This is some bullshit. Let's actually team up and like not fight each other on the same turf and all that other kind of shit. And they actually like increased their seats, and I think have a majority in the French Parliament or something along those lines. So their representation is much better there than it was before.
We'll
so yeah,
see
there is
that.
definitely hope to be had.
And there you go. And I mean, like even in Australia, like our trade situation is really good too. Like we have the TPP, which is the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and there can be now a reliance on Australia, our trading with countries like Indonesia, our trade with Europe, and that's another like one of the positive results for Brexit, which is not positive for the British people, but is positive for the Australian people, is they've put themselves into such an economic position where they do need to trade with us far more. So there are open avenues to bring more of our trade into Britain, and it'll probably be facing far less tariffs than the Europeans will as well. There is hope out there that the world is realigning. The question is, do we look over in America and does America wall itself up from the rest of the world? Quite possibly. Does America enter some sort of civil conflict in the next couple of years? Quite possibly. What does that mean for the rest of the world? Well, it could be terrible where, China feels free to then, invade everyone. Or it could be that the rest of the world continues to carry on. Our trade on this side of the planet is strengthened, and America just deteriorates into itself. And I mean, those are all possibilities. But it is good to see that there is a rebalancing of the world. I think this also happens. Unfortunately, it seems to be a cyclical way that the world is governed, where I was talking to an older relative of mine not too recently, and she was pointing out, well, Matthew, we've been through this before. There was Reaganism and Thatcher, and you have that sort of cycle of conservative custodianship of the world, and then there'll be a massive overcorrection to the left side of politics. The big problem with this cycle, though, is that conservatives seem to be able to maintain that power for such a substantially longer time than progressives are allowed to come in. So it's like progressives come in, they do a bit of cleanup, they try and get things back on the road, they try and move the needle forward, and then for some reason conservatives are able to just sort of pounce back in and then take over for another 9 years. and that's that cycle we seem to be on again.
Yeah, that's mostly I would consider that mostly due to power dynamics, right? If you're looking at things in terms of like a left-right paradigm, the left want to remove hierarchy, and the right generally wants to keep it or construct more of it, right? So those with power want to keep that going, and so if they have power, they're going to do it that way. So that's generally just in a world that has hierarchies already. Abolishing them and flattening that out is going to be a lot harder and more difficult than otherwise. So,
Absolutely. Especially when, you look at the power structure of somewhere like America. American politicians don't work for Americans.
no.
American politicians work for this oligarchical system that they've created where, Jeff Bezos is allowed to have $200 billion in his pocket, while also securing all of these government deals. That's what America is. America is run by a series of oligarchs who are extraordinarily wealthy, and they're able to manipulate their political system. And the people within the political system now, the Republican movement felt that they could maintain power by pandering to the evangelical madmen of the American society, and they thought that they could control them. And that's quite obvious. It's quite evident that they couldn't. But regardless of whether they could control them or not, they're still benefiting either by increasing the hold they have on the power structure or by increasing their financial gains. I think if you threw a rock at the American Congress, you would find it very, very difficult not to hit someone in the head who wasn't profiting off their own shitbaggery. And that's what's going on in America right now. And, that's a tricky thing to fight. And there has to be a significant will of the people in order to do that. And much like what happened with the British with Brexit, I think you'd find it very difficult to mobilize, people power in the US right now. And even when they do mobilize it, they've got a police state that is armed to the fucking teeth, ready to put it down every time that they do decide to protest. I expected over the last couple of weeks to see mass protests in America once the Roe v. Wade ruling was overturned by the Supreme Court. And I'm yet to see any of that. And, while there has been small scale protests, there's been nothing like what I expected to see out there in America. It gets to the point where women no longer have the right to choose about their own reproductive health. They essentially become a organism that is producing a child, and that's all they're considered. Their human rights are taken away, and that hasn't resulted in mass protests in America. They just recently they just had their Independence Day, and during one of the parades, a madman with a gun ran through and murdered 30 odd people. Children were hiding under people's bodies while they were all having a nice, happy parade. That still hasn't moved the needle. And you've got to ask the question, is the population in America so beaten down that this is their new normal? And I think it is. So, going all the way back to my original point, I guess, when it comes to the rebalancing of the world, I think we do need to consider a world where America is just an isolationist, protectionist state that doesn't have much to do with the rest of us while we carry on with the rest of the world, Tommy. And I know that that idea scares some people because that means less American military protection for the rest of us.
Yeah, okay, look, I want one last thing to do with Boris Johnson before we move on. It'll be a funny one. So to wrap up that screed about America, I'll say that I kind of agree for the most part. I mean, I was talking to you before about Donald Trump being in. It wasn't on the show. I think it was we were at work when this happened. And we were like, yeah, we want Donald Trump to be in because America seems like, even with the Democrats, they're screwed anyway. They're not getting anything done. So at least Donald Trump will entertain us. Right? I have softened on that position a little bit since then because people have brought up the fact that, hey, if Donald Trump gets in, there's a lot of issues that happen with Republicans where they will deny climate change and that kind of stuff. And if Donald Trump does that and stops meaningful climate change action from happening in America, then we're all screwed. And in that way, I would prefer there to be no action than action, because the action would result in everyone else's jobs being harder. Because everyone in the world would have to do negative, like carbon sequestration, to a higher degree, just to offset America being them.
Yeah, I mean look, it's a valid point. You know, I think what's been suggested to me has been that America needs to completely collapse in on itself in order to rebuild its structure, just because they are so fundamentally like I always think about this in the terms of the film Batman Begins, right? To
Gotta
swing my
always
pop
frame things
culture
through
dick
Batman,
around a little
Matthew. Oh
bit.
my god.
You've got Ra's al Ghul comes back to Gotham, and he says to Bruce Wayne, Batman, Gotham is so corrupt that the only way to fix this city is to burn it to the fucking ground and start again. Right, that's his entire MO in that movie. He's an eco-terrorist. He wants to reset the balance, due to staggering corruption. I find it difficult to think about an America that doesn't have to go through a massive civil catastrophe in order to reset their system, because every aspect of American society has been infiltrated, corrupted, and controlled by a group of individuals who continue to take away American freedoms, who continue to propagate a society that is more dangerous for Americans to live in, that is harder to make a living wage in, that is more difficult to get educated in. And these people have infiltrated government, from local courthouses to law enforcement, to their political structure, to their corporate structure. Every single aspect of American society has been infiltrated by very dangerous people who do want to do nothing but cause harm. How do you cut that out without some sort of massive civil unrest? I don't have the answer for that. Maybe someone smarter than me does, but that's where I lay on this. Where do you have to burn the whole thing down and build it back from scratch? And do the Americans have to go through, a massive civil unrest in order to make that happen? I think they do, which
Okay.
is very sad.
I don't. Yeah, you just, to me, if they can somehow just get more people to vote and just to vote overwhelmingly Democrat, then they'll be okay. The only reason why they're, well, not the only reason, but part of the reason why they're as shit as they are now is because Democrats don't have a supermajority. If they had that, they would be fine, because people like Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema wouldn't have any power at all, and they'd be outvoted by the rest of the people that are more in line. But there are other failings on top of the line. Like there are things right now that Biden could be doing to curtail the power of the Supreme Court, but he's not doing that because he's weak-willed, and he doesn't want to do anything to upset the balance.
I don't understand why. What's he got to lose?
Oh, it's like, again, the current crop of Democrats don't want to like shake the boat up too much. So the idea of expanding the Supreme Court, they don't want to do, because they're like, oh, it's similar to other reasoning for them not doing anything, right? So it's like, oh, we don't want to get rid of the filibuster, because if we get rid of the filibuster, that means when the Republicans are in power, then they'll get to do stuff. It's that kind of reasoning, which you just like, hey, yeah, but they're doing that kind of stuff anyway. So just get rid of the filibuster, so at least you can do something when you're in power. But again, they don't think on those terms. It's very strange.
Like, there seems to be no fight in them, and right now, the Republicans under Trump had managed to completely stack the Supreme Court. They knew what they were doing. They've done it quite successfully. The Republicans have maintained absolute power and control right now, like, through this democratic process. So the Democrats are in charge, but Roe v. Wade has been overturned. Gay marriage looks to be overturned. Just recently in another state, they've said it's now illegal to as a bystander to film a police interaction. Women are being hunted in Texas, and there are bounties being put on their heads if they're suspected of having an abortion. This is happening right now. So if they're not prepared to take up the fight, what's going to do it? And yes, Tommy is right in saying in the chat that Matt said that we shouldn't talk about America. And I
No,
shouldn't.
you said. Well, this is that you said that. So I'm like, this is amusing to me
and you're
that you're
right.
like I didn't prompt this.
You
I in
didn't,
no way
you
prompted
didn't.
this whole stun lock of Americanism.
And-
But like
and-
I like talking about America because I think it's fascinating, and I think it's important to talk about America because especially in the last 9 years of being under coalition rule, we were heading towards becoming America. And
We
so
were.
you look out at them and go, okay, that is what we don't want to be. And if
Yep.
we look at them and say, oh yeah, that's horrific, but it'll never happen, we just slowly slide into becoming that. And I think it's more important to look at that and go, that's horrific. We should recognize that we could absolutely go there and we shouldn't.
Yeah, on our trajectory, on the highway that we all travel together, there is a big fucking signpost that says, keep going along this road and you're going to hit America really soon. The reason that I don't like to discuss America, number one, is because I don't think there's enough Australian content out there produced for Australians by Australians talking about Australian issues. So that's the reason why we produce weird crap in Australia, because that was our mandate for that. And I like the Modern Meltdown to be the same. The other thing is because for me, I see it as such a hopeless situation that much like what happened with Brexit, the American society has been slowly over the years tricked into believing that the current state that they're in is the most pure expression of freedom that they've ever had. And the reason they believe that is because very powerful people put it in their heads that if you own a gun, you are ultimately freer than any other person on the planet. So I find it to be a very hopeless situation to discuss American politics and to discuss it with Americans because their system has brainwashed them into believing that this is the only way that they'll have the truest expression of freedom in the world. To the point as well where if they believe they're getting free medicine, that's somehow a detraction from their ability to be free in their society instead of an addition. And I am disheartened that no matter what is said concerning these issues, the majority of the population in America are either unwilling, unable, or have such a hard time pushing past the propaganda that they're unable to even work towards changing their situation. So for me, it feels like discussing that is pissing in the wind. But you do raise a very good point, Tommy, that discussing it as a signpost of what Australian society could become is probably something that we should do from time to time. So maybe I should amend my stance a little bit there.
Yeah. All right. Look, I don't want to start. I would continue that line, but I don't want to get into. I don't want to prolong this stun lock. So
Yep.
we're gonna go back into something fun. So this is so we're gonna cap off the Boris Johnson stuff with this article from The Shovel, which is the satirical news site. Liberal Party confused why UK Conservatives would force leader to resign just because he's an incompetent, lying psychopath. Senior members of the Australian Liberal Party have expressed their amazement at the forced resignation of Boris Johnson just for being an utterly useless arse clown. One spokesperson for the party said it beggared belief that their British counterparts would force their leader to go. I mean, apart from shirking his responsibilities as Prime Minister, constantly lying to the public, going missing in a crisis, making a shambles of the pandemic response, trying to downplay a sexual misconduct scandal, and generally acting like a sociopath, I think Johnson did a pretty decent job. And yet they want him to go? Incredible. We would have backed him in for another 2 terms minimum. One Liberal Party MP said the Conservatives have become fixated on a few small mistakes. Okay, so Boris Johnson is a compulsive liar, but from what Boris Johnson has told me himself, he's an excellent leader. So it seems like a big mistake to get rid of him, in my view. A strategist within the Liberal Party said the Conservatives didn't know how good they had it with Johnson. This is a man who only got sacked from 1 job. As far as we can tell, Scott Morrison got sacked from at least 2, and yet he always had the party's full support. Amazing. It's so like that last bit is so on point, dude.
Yep.
Oh god.
The just speaking to Scott Morrison, do you know what he's trying to get as his next job? He's actually trying to find employment.
Look,
Do you know what he's after?
I don't know how true that is. I did see an article that he wanted to be part of the NRL or something.
Yes, he's trying to join the management board of the National Rugby League. And honestly, I think it's true. I think it's 100% true. That's exactly what that dude would be. Like, Scott Morrison was never interested in being a leader. He just wants to like be in a cushy position, and I mean, he wants to sit there and be like, "Yes, now I can help the Sharkies from the inside. I'll make sure they'll get all the funding that they need to win the NRL every year." I mean, like that's look, honestly, that's where I'd rather he go. Like, if that's where he's going to go and get out of everyone's fucking life, and he's just going to sit on the NRL board and have a nice cushy job for the rest of his life, please do that. Because I'd rather that than fucking like what Tony Abbott did. Like, he's a member of the board of the War Memorial here in Canberra. And if anyone's been past the War Memorial in the last like nearly 2 years, you've seen all those, the scaffolding and construction going on there, because they're turning the War Memorial into a glorified museum of war as opposed to a shrine of remembrance. And that's because Tony Abbott is a fuckhead who's on that board. And Tony Abbott is now trying to infiltrate the New South Wales Liberal Party as well. You know, so if Scott Morrison wants to fuck off into a nothing position on the NRL board, please do it. That's where I prefer he would go, honestly.
I think it makes sense for Scott Morrison to try that thing. I don't know if the NRL, because I kind of think the NRL are kind of smart when it comes to like marketing and doing that kind of stuff. If you think about it, no one else in the world has NRL, really, but it's a big thing in Australia.
The Brits do.
Yeah, but it's not. I don't think, as far as I recall, it's not that big in England. But it's like, in terms of what I remember growing up and how I kind of feel about it now, the NRL is like the 3rd biggest televised sport that people watch. Behind the cricket and the AFL, right?
I think, and I could be wrong here, but I think it's like, when it comes to viewership, it's the Australian summer cricket season, followed closely by the AFL and then the NRL. Because the NRL is predominantly a New South Wales supported sport, whereas the AFL is, you know, Victoria and Western Australia, South Australia. So it has a bit of a bigger block of Australian viewership. But I could be very wrong about that. I'm not a sports guy.
But like, you also have like rugby and soccer that are emerging, and the NRL like it doesn't make sense now, right? But if you think about, well, it makes sense now, but it didn't. At some point in time, it was unfathomable, and it was like, hey, we're gonna do this thing where we create this one series of games where it's New South Wales versus Queensland, right? And we're gonna call it State of Origin, which is just, this is the state that you like originated from in terms of your football playing, and we're going to make you battle it out amongst your potential teammates and things like that. And that, like, I don't know if that's done anywhere else in the world, that kind of format, and yet in here it's a huge blockbuster event.
Yep.
So there is a very savvy marketing machine behind the NRL, and I think if they were to put Scott Morrison in, that's the sport's done. I don't
Yeah.
know, like,
It
and I don't. So I
it
think they're smart enough not to include. At least if they were going to accept him, they give him some kind of shit position.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, but you know, my personal feeling towards it, it's like if that's where he fucks off to, well, he won't cause any problems there. So, you know, by all means, head over to the
Yeah,
NRL, Scotty.
I
You're
guess that's
fine.
fair enough. All right,
You
Matt.
got Matt's approval. Go
Yeah.
for it.
What? Okay, so we've done the Boris Johnson stuff. What did you want to cover next? Because I think there's a lot of stuff. We're probably not going to get through all of it, but so yeah.
I reckon let's do some more feel good stuff. We've got a little story here on Anthony Albanese making sure that Parliament is going to be operating correctly and appropriately.
Oh,
Um,
the ministerial thing.
Yes, yes. So let's talk about that. The reason I want to talk about it too is I've just listened to I've nearly finished Malcolm Turnbull's book, and he was the first person to introduce the updates to the ministerial code of conduct.
Yeah, the bonk man.
So I can talk about its origins a little bit, and I can
Okay.
and we can talk about, you know, what's happening there if you wanted to bring that article up.
Sure. Anthony Albanese bars ministers from blind trusts in new code of conduct. A fresh code of conduct has been signed off on by Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, but it will not apply to the entire parliament. Instead, the new code lays down the ground rules for government ministers and is an updated model based on the one used by the previous Labour government in 2015. Frontbenchers will be required to divest themselves of shareholdings. Nice. Once promoted to the ministry. That's fucking excellent.
It is. It
Yeah.
is.
But they will also no longer be able to hold interests in blind trust arrangements. The new ruling is in response to the furor stoked by the declaration that former Attorney General Christian Porter had legal fees paid for by a trust with funds from unknown sources. I think that was to cover his defamations and shit like that he had going on. Mr. Porter sued the ABC for defamation. Oh fuck, I was gonna go straight into it. Over an article airing allegations of a 1988 sexual assault of a now deceased woman by a senior cabinet minister. He vehemently denied the allegations. Mr. Porter stepped down from his front bench position, but was later cleared of any wrongdoing by a powerful parliamentary privilege committee. But the committee recommended the rules should be updated to uphold the integrity of the members' register of interests. Yeah. I think there was also a thing, and okay, so I'll let you go. There's not much else interesting in this article, but there was also a thing with Katie Gallagher saying that, yeah, she's going to essentially do what was in the Jenkins report. And this was centered around her being the minister for women. So there's going to be stuff happening on that front as well. And there was something about the speed of the work that was being done previously that it seemed like they weren't doing a thorough enough job or something. And so that seems like it's going to change under her guidance on that front specifically. But it's good to see this kind of stuff from Anthony Albanese. But yeah, if you want to go ahead and talk about your insights, go for it.
So the complete reworking of the ministerial code of conduct that started back, I want to say in 2018, if I've got my dates correct. And the reason that it started was because Malcolm Turnbull was seen in his office. He was Prime Minister of the time. The Liberal Party coalition was in charge. Gets a knock on the door because a article is about to be dropped about the Deputy Prime Minister at the time, Barnaby Joyce. He was spotted with his media staffer at a doctor's surgery here in Canberra. And the theme of the story was going to be that he was there because his staffer was getting a pregnancy test and he was the father. So that goes to Malcolm Turnbull. Malcolm Turnbull has a meeting with the Deputy Prime Minister, who emphatically denies that he is indeed having an affair. Later, it's proven that he absolutely was. So once Malcolm Turnbull was made aware of this, he starts looking into it a little bit deeper. He knows it's going to be made public, and he knows that there's going to have to be action taken on it. Now, interestingly enough, there seems to have been this unwritten rule in the press gallery, and this is why standards in Australian journalism need to get a real good kick in the arse, that unless the story was super, super scandalous, and an affair with the Deputy Prime Minister was going to definitely be super scandalous, and it was definitely going to be written about. But unless it was super scandalous, the idea was that affairs were happening constantly in Canberra. Ministers were frequently having affairs with staff people. They were frequently seen out and about. It was one of those unspoken about things. And the idea was that the press gallery wouldn't report on it. Sorry. My
Getting a
phone
lot of text.
is going fucking nuts. 1 second. I'm just going to fix this up. I apologize, everyone. I have a very loud ringtone because I suffered hearing damage when I used to work in a factory. And everyone hates my ringtone, but I'm not going to change it.
It's because
Now,
it's too goddamn
regardless of
long.
that-
Okay, it's fine. All right.
Now, so that's what was going on. So Malcolm Turnbull decided to refresh the Prime Minister Code of Conduct. It was found that the Deputy Prime Minister, Barnaby Joyce, had been having an affair with his staffer, and she had gotten pregnant. That, of course, destroyed his marriage, rightfully so. And Barnaby Joyce was going back and forth and essentially being held up as the poster child of why you shouldn't be doing this. And then the term bonk ban was introduced by the media, which I've always felt was inappropriate because I think it made the situation humorous. Every other workplace in Australia has very strict guidelines about what is appropriate in the workplace and what is not. If you have a subordinate that you start pursuing a sexual relationship with, and if you do it in the confines of your workplace, in most Australian workplaces, you're going to be fired and an investigation is going to be had. I've worked in corporations before, past and present, in which this has happened, and I've actively seen people removed from their positions due to it. Yet our politicians thought that they could have sex with their staffers. I mean, that, if you don't think that that's wrong, or if you feel that that is over the top, that people should be punished for that, well, it may speak a little bit towards your character, but I think it's extraordinarily inappropriate, and it does open up, it opens up our parliamentary system being coerced by foreign power because they have dirt on them, essentially. There's a lot of spies here in Canberra, and not a lot of them work for us. So that's what went down there. Now, under the Morrison administration, we saw that, unfortunately for one staffer, they were raped inside Parliament House. And that's where this always ends up. It starts with ministerial improper conduct and will generally progress to the point where it's criminal. So the Albanese government has now turned around and continued to expand on the ministerial code of conduct. They've continued to expand on rules and regulations when it comes to what ministers can do. And honestly, I think it's fantastic. I think it's a move in the right direction. We don't need to see any more criminal behaviour occurring in Parliament House. We don't need to see politicians exercising their power over young, impressionable people that they think they can manipulate into sexual relationships. And we don't need to see thugs and criminals being able to wield that power over people. And so I'm very glad to see that. For people like Barnaby Joyce, who showed exactly how much a character he has over his scandal, where he even suggested that his girlfriend's baby may not have even been his baby, which is absolutely fucking disgusting. People like that will hopefully either have their behavior curtailed or they won't consider going into Parliament anyway. And I think that's fantastic. I think it's fantastic that the Jenkins review has been implemented. And I think it's fantastic that, you've got someone like Katie Gallagher behind that, making sure that it gets done. I think Katie Gallagher has a lot of integrity. She was great for Canberra while she was here, and I think she's going to do very well in that role too. So, this is good news, because if your workplace has these standards, so should Parliament, right? We shouldn't be held to a higher standard than the people elected to represent us.
Yeah.
That's where I come down on it. I think, when you are trusted with a significant amount of power, then you have to be of high integrity. The other side of that, of course, is, Christian Porter's legal fees being paid for by a blind trust. That shouldn't be happening. We should know where money is coming from, especially when someone who is in an active political role is, being assisted in legal proceedings. And
Yeah.
the other side of that is the divestment of financial interest, because the divesting of financial interest means that we can curtail lobbyists getting into the ears of Canberra, into the ears of Canberran politicians. I've said time and time again, there is a war between us, the people, and Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola can afford to pay a politician millions of dollars. We can't. So that means that we have to make sure that there are standards and practices in place so that Coca-Cola cannot pay for our politicians. They need to work for us, not for Coca-Cola, who can afford to give them the big dollars. So I think these three actions that have been taken by the Albanese government speak to Anthony Albanese's integrity. I think it speaks to the integrity of the Parliament, and it's also safeguarding the Parliament. Should Conservatives get into power again in the future, they won't be able to pull the shenanigans they've been able to in the past.
Yeah, hopefully not. Hopefully they won't. This isn't something that they can just write off and change. They can do that kind of stuff, but it would
Yep.
be kind of ridiculous for them to do that. I think the optics would be very bad. But yeah, just to harp on that Christian Porter point a little bit more, our taxpayer money. So the money that we worked hard for and that we give the government, some of that was used for Christian Porter's defamation suit against the ABC. Now, as an individual, he can do that with his. He has the right to do that if he fucking wants, I guess, right? But for us to fund that is ridiculous.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. We shouldn't have had to fund him because he had hurt feelings. If he's got hurt feelings and needs to go to the court to preserve his reputation. And I mean, the dude looks like a fucking, actually, I shouldn't say that. He'll sue me.
Allegedly.
But he does look like a
Potentially.
villain from Star Wars. He does look like he should be working for Darth Vader as an Imperial officer. If he feels that he needs to go out and protect his reputation, he can do that. And he can do that with his own personal money. What's very interesting, and I did list this in the notes, but I'll quickly tie it to this because we don't really have time to cover it in full. But Christian Porter is now acting for gangland figure Mark Gatto in his High Court appeal over ABC's defamation case. Now, Mick Gatto, it's been implied that he says it's been implied by the ABC that he intimidated a former lawyer known as Witness X.
Oh man, Matt, you're breaking up a little bit.
State's evidence against a lot of gangland figures during the Melbourne gangland wars.
Yes. Can you just repeat that stuff from Witness X? I think it was.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so Witness X was a lawyer who turned state's evidence against a considerable amount of Melbourne gangland figures. If you'd like to know more about the gangland war stuff, you can check out my podcast, We Crap in Australia. But during this, the ABC wrote an article where they suggested that Mick Gatto said that he would go out and murder Lawyer X, and Gatto is very upset about this, and so he's suing the ABC for defamation. Mick Gatto is the same gentleman that you may recognize from the series Underbelly, where he's seen associating with murderers and thugs.
Yeah.
Somehow he managed to get out of all of that squeaky clean, but I don't think he has much of a reputation to maintain, considering books have been written about him and he's been a character on a crime show. But he still feels that he should be doing that. And Christian Porter, just an upstanding gentleman, a real, man of the people, a man
Yeah.
of law and order, is going to be representing known underworld figure Mick Gatto in his defamation suit against the ABC, and that what that says speaks volumes about those two gentlemen. But I just thought that was funny. It's worth talking about in this little.
That
bit
is
here.
a little bit strange, right? You go to the guy like Christian Porter lost
He
that
did,
thing, didn't
yes.
he? I was like, why would you get that guy who lost a defamation suit to represent you in a defamation suit against this? Whatever. They're rich. They can do whatever the fuck they want, I guess. As like this time, at least taxpayer money isn't being used for it. But that's Jesus Christ, dude.
And it's just like I love how after sort of being pulled through the ringer, which Christian Porter was. There were some serious allegations leveled against him. There was some circumstantial evidence as well, some very powerful circumstantial evidence that was leveled against him. I guess once all of that's happened to you, you're just like, fuck it. I don't have a reputation to maintain anymore. I'm going to go and represent an underworld figure because why the fuck not?
Yeah.
It's just so fucking on brand. And that's why I always say, these people are not respectable. They don't have your best interests at heart. And they're not even really conservatives. Because if Christian Porter was such a good little Christian boy, he wouldn't be representing an underworld figure. Because Christian Porter has enough money that he doesn't have to work as legal counsel for anyone ever again. So what's the go here? Are they mates?
That still sounds pretty conservative to me. He might not be a good Christian representing this criminal, but
Yeah. But yeah, that whole saga is quite funny. Like I said, it speaks to the character of the people who used to be in power in this country. Very scary stuff.
Yeah. To keep on the labor hype train, you had a story about climate modeling, which was abandoned by Abbott 9 years ago, is reinstated by the Labor government. So like and I think that's one of the benefits of having these guys with all of this experience still in there. They're like, yeah, that stuff that we did 9 years ago, still relevant. We're just gonna do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and what's interesting as well about the climate modeling that was abandoned during the Abbott era was that work still happened. And like you said, Tommy, it's easy enough to just dust this stuff off and keep it going. So it was abandoned during the Abbott era because Tony Abbott is a lunatic who believes that there's no such thing as climate change. He wants everyone to be an evangelical Christian and to just basically give up on common sense. He's also anti equal marriage rights for people, even though his sister identifies as homosexual. He's an all-round piece of shit, and he knows it. So Tony Abbott decided to abandon this climate modeling, but the Turnbull government also kept that moving, which meant that the Labor Party under the Rudd Gillard administration had already started the train. Malcolm Turnbull kept it going, even though that they weren't able to bring it to the public. And now the Albanese government, which is in power, is able to come in, especially with the backing of the Teal Independents, who were elected based on their climate change pledges. That was one half. Obviously one half was integrity in politics, with bringing in a federal ICAC. The other was,
stronger action on climate change.
Quick and decisive action on climate. So now the Anthony Albanese government is able to dust off all that modelling that had been abandoned by the Abbott government and the Morrison government, and they're able to get that up and running and started properly and devote resources to it, so that we can make sure that we are doing our absolute best to combat climate change from our country. As well as climate modelling isn't just about protecting the environment. Like if you're someone who's like, oh, I hate the greenies, I want greenies to fuck off, or I don't believe in greenies. All right, fair enough. You don't like leftist greenies. Well, climate modeling also helps us to adapt our industry so that it is more profitable and more effective as the climate changes. As we invest more and more in renewable technology, it's going to allow us to make good financial decisions about how to position our industries going forward. So
Yeah.
if you don't like greenies and lefties, but you do like money and corporations, this is also good news for you as well.
Yeah, but also in a fucking addition to that, mate. All right, think about this. You hate the greens,
Right?
you hate the fucking trees, but guess what, mate? Modeling maximizes jobs, cunt. All right,
That's right.
fucking important that shit. Fucking jobs, 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 jobs.
Jobs, money, jobs. Climate
That's
modeling will help. You know,
exactly. That's it.
and like, look, I know I'm taking the piss a little bit, but it's also important to try it. Look, if you don't like the leftist agenda, but you do like corporations, well, this is great. Just recently, uh myself, I'm building an investment portfolio. I sold some shares recently that weren't doing a lot, so I'm now building an investable. I'm now building an investment portfolio, and I'm looking at renewables because one of Australia's biggest renewables investor, which is listed on the ASX as ACDC, which I think is a wonderful little pun there.
Nice. Yep.
Those shares have been doing extraordinarily well. If we want to talk in real financial terms, people who invested in the ACDC fund when it was only a couple of cents are now enjoying share prices which are $76 a share. It like literally renewables made those investors extraordinarily wealthy.
Yep.
There's money
Okay.
to
So
be had out there.
yeah.
So,
So
don't think of it as just this lefty greenist agenda. There's substantial money to be made in renewables.
yeah, absolutely. Someone who doesn't is not as big a fan of gambling as Matt is here. Um,
Bullshit, I've seen you play cards. I sat next to you in a casino while you did
yeah, that's fair. But look,
it.
you've taken the next step and now you're investing. Anyway,
Yes.
what it's fine. What I will say though, like one of the things that you can do also is a small thing, but if you have a super account, I don't know whether all super accounts do this, but mine's an industry super account, and they had an option recently to change all of your investments into like renewable or like climate friendly or some other kind of new tech or whatever. And I think if you have that option, it's probably a good idea to do that because you're probably gonna make a decent amount of cash, but it's also good
Yep.
for the environment if you divest some of your money from like coal and oil and shit into renewables.
Yep.
And
And even and then another thing that you can do as well, like even if you are still, oh, I don't like greenies, I'm not going to switch to a carbon neutral super fund. If you love mining, if your dick gets real hard over mining, invest in lithium because lithium is eventually going to be used. Like that lithium that's being mined today is going to be used in the battery storage in which renewable energy is going to be captured into. So you can do the wrong thing, or not that's the wrong thing. You can invest in mining and still have a positive impact towards the environment. So you get to be nasty, but still actually kind of do a good thing accidentally.
yeah, sure.
You know, there's lots of ways to offset it. But like from a financial perspective, switching over your super account to renewables, and we're not financial advisors, we're not pretending to be. Go and get actual proper advice. But being able to switch that to towards renewables should actually end up generating you far more profit than being locked into to traditional investments like fossil fuels and oil production and things like that. Because those industries are slowly going to fail. Like I said, that ACDC fund, which is entirely invested in renewables, $76 a share. If you'd invested when it was like 30 cents a share, you'd be making hundreds of thousands of dollars now.
Okay.
Like it's absolutely insane how well renewables are doing in
All right, look.
the stock exchange.
I want to protect Gary and Cookie here and anyone else who's listening from this thing, because you are sounding like a lot like any of those crypto scammers right now. It's just like, oh man, it's to the moon.
Sorry.
The stock is going to the moon, boys. You better get in now. You know, just Matt points out this is survivorship bias, right? So Matt is pointing out a stock that is very successful, that is in this sphere, but there are probably 10 others that failed. So that is something to consider also when you think about this.
Absolutely.
Do not take our advice. Matt's just looking at one example, going, yeah, renewables, sick. I think generally economists would say that trend is on, especially with labor in power. The reason why we've had a lack of investment is because people didn't know of the stability that, because there wasn't any plan. So why would you invest in renewables if you weren't guaranteed a thing? But now they're definitely rolling in that direction. We're getting investments in there, and the more investment is there, the more the stocks go up. The stonks.
Yep.
But anyway, don't take our advice. Do your own, well,
No.
Get better financial advice from someone who knows things.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a very fair point to make, Tommy, especially recently in Australia. Financial social media influencers have now actually been hit with a lot of regulation as well. Rightfully so, that it's very important. But I've always been an advocate for renewable energy, and the fact that the financials are now backing up my support for renewables, it makes me very happy to spruik them. And I might get a little bit too enthusiastic. So you are right to point that out, Tommy.
Yeah. All right, Matt. To Labor. Okay, so we talked about this last week, how Labor went and did a whole a charm offensive across the globe, as people have been calling it. And I had this article by Phil Coury on the Australian Financial Review, and I thought it was it's liberals being liberals, dude. And I want to read it out. This is gonna stir your blood for a little bit, but I want someone else to suffer. So here we go. Labor learns government is not so easy as it seemed in opposition. As Anthony Albanese's plane departed Europe for home on Monday with a scheduled arrival time of Tuesday night, the travelling media was informed the Prime Minister would visit the New South Wales flood on Thursday. By the time the RAAF jet landed in the United Arab Emirates to refuel, the flood visit had been brought forward to Wednesday. When the plane landed in Perth on Tuesday morning to refuel again, Albanese conducted a quick news conference on the tarmac under the wing to avoid the rain. Clutching an airstick bag on which he had written a series of talking points, notice the framing there, the Prime Minister's tone was notably defensive given he had just capped off a successful and important 10 days abroad. Albanese was keen to press home that he had not been lollygagging on some junket, but had been doing important work. It was impossible to separate international events and the mounting crisis at home. The Russian invasion has implications for the rules-based international order, he said, in a reference to Australia's more immediate threat from China, but it was also having an impact on Australians with rising energy prices, rising inflation, impact on supply chains, and including on food. Moreover, while away, he had been in touch with the ministers about the New South Wales floods. All was in hand, and he would visit the affected regions first thing in the morning with New South Wales Premier Dominic Perrottet. In hindsight, had Albanese known about the floods, the Ukraine visit was not vital. It added 3 days to a week-long trip, making it 10 days. That's a long time to be away when there is a lot happening at home, especially given it was a third trip since the election and there is another one next week. New Zealand's Jacinda Ardern also at the NATO summit, and so often the benchmark the left use when criticizing Scott Morrison, declined a similar invitation to visit Ukraine. She sent best wishes and support, and Volodymyr Zelensky still gave her a shout-out on Twitter. It is silly that a Prime Minister should have to justify his trip to NATO in Spain, followed by a relationship-building mission to Paris, and then a trip to Ukraine to show solidarity against Russia's aggression. But stupid and politics often go hand in glove, and Albanese was clearly sensitive to the low-level grumbling that had begun at home about his travel schedule, just as his column predicted a fortnight ago. The mob is generally resentful and doesn't always see things the same as those who are close to politics and who understand the importance of prime ministerial travel. And the mob view in this occasion is not helped by the parliament not having sat since the election, and that it will not do so until the end of this month. Now, to break out of this a little bit, this fucking line, it is silly that a prime minister should have to justify his trip to the NATO summit in Spain. Yeah, it is silly. I wonder why he has to go out there and justify that trip. I wonder where the attacks and this low level grumbling came from. Person who is part of the press.
I wonder, do we think it may be from shitbag journalists, maybe some who even work for the Financial Review, who have been hashtagging things like Albo photo op or where is Albo, and comparing Anthony Albanese's rebuilding of our foreign relationships to Scott Morrison fucking off on a holiday during the worst bushfire crisis that this country had ever fucking seen.
Yeah, and the bushfires happened before he went on holiday as well.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe Anthony Albanese has to defend himself and speak quickly and precisely like a fucking tactical missile because Murdoch press are just waiting with their dicks in their hands, ready to jerk off all over themselves while writing about how Anthony Albanese disappeared from Australia during a flood crisis. I wonder if maybe that's why he was a little bit defensive and ready to attack them back. Because they're a fucking pack of hyenas laughing and giggling and licking each other's asses, just waiting to write those fucking articles.
Yeah, excellent.
Hell.
So I brought up this other article that you wanted to talk about. Peter Dutton holidaying in US as colleagues blast Albo for Ukraine visit. So yeah, the low grumbling was coming from the fucking liberals because they're fucking stupid, and it was actually quite embarrassing that whole thing as well. That they did.
This is why their own Muppet is over in America sucking off some Republican dicks, which we know that's what he was off there doing, where he was brown-nosing up to those fucking conservatives going, you know what, mate? I really like how you've turned most of America into Galley from The Handmaid's Tale. I think you've done a pretty good job. How can I replicate that in Australia when I look like a fucking monster from Harry Potter? That's what he went over there to find out. Yeah, he just wants to know how he can bring back to Australia a popularist campaign so that he can come out with his big dick swinging at the next election and try and destroy this fucking country. That's what Peter Dutton is off doing. So all of his little colleagues who are singing and dancing, which is exactly what they do. The conservative liberals in Australia, they're the best at being opposition. They're the worst at leading a fucking government, but god damn they are great at being an opposition party, and that's exactly what they're doing. Anthony Albanese, sorry, go ahead, Tommy.
Okay, no, I was gonna say they were good. I think that they're slipping. Like this is pretty shit. Like it doesn't feel the same to me as when Tony Abbott was in. But yeah, like to translate, like Matt is correct. I feel like when he said what he's saying about why Dutton is there, but to translate that into a little bit more of like a news speak, the Australian he's attending the Australian American Leadership Dialogue, which is a thing that exists apparently in America, and he's got a job to do, and his job is to represent Australia. Says, oh no, that's what Anthony Albanese says in response to Dutton. Let Peter Dutton, when he returns from leave, say if he thinks it inappropriate for me to go to the Pacific Island Forum. Right, like, because he has to get the okay from the fucking opposition whether or not he can go to another thing for foreign relations. But look, I don't want to spend any much more time talking about these fucking wastes of space. We'll go back to Phil Corey being a piece of shit and finish this off, okay? Because yeah, Jacinda Ardern didn't go to NATO, and I find it interesting because she in a press conference with Albanese was like, yeah, it was really good that Albo could go there because I didn't, and now he can relay the experience to me about what happened there, and we can share in that. And there was this beautiful, like, sort of just this team dynamic where they were like, yeah, we can work on, like, we can basically tackle this kind of stuff together. So there's this sense that in the Pacific, it's not just Australia dealing with its backyard. It's Australia and New Zealand and everyone in the Pacific getting together and forming like a united front and trying to solve problems together. And I think that's a very meaningful thing
Yep.
to do.
And we discussed this a couple of streams ago. This is very, very important for maintaining security in our region. This is not us fighting the world. This is not us building a nuclear powered submarine fleet and going to fight China. This is about making sure that the people within our region, New Zealand, Solomon Islands, Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, all of these countries are on the same page. We work together. We have good trade agreements. We don't try and fuck up each other's life. And that is the best way to keep our region secure. It's as simple as that. And it doesn't require bombs and missiles and guns and tanks. Just maintaining good relationships. On the back of this as well, it has been floated that New Zealand residents who are working in Australia, who are paying taxes, who are contributing to our social systems, are also allowed to vote in our elections. I think that's wonderful.
They're increasing their rights and their pathway towards
Yeah.
citizenship and things like that. And I think that's good. That I think is a very uncontroversial thing to have.
Considering for the last couple of years, the Conservatives have been fucking off Australian criminals, and I mean it when I say Australian criminals because they were born, they've been here since they were 1 or 2 years old, but they're still considered New Zealand citizens. We were fucking off our homemade criminals back to New Zealand to fuck their country up, and I think that we're obviously now taking the opposite approach. I have often people forget this again. Inadvertently becoming a social historian, I now know far more about this country than I ever thought I would. Back in the very earliest days of federalization, which most people don't realize, discussions were had with New Zealand to actually incorporate them as Australian territory. Australia has a ridiculously close relationship with New Zealand. We celebrate the Anzacs, the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps.
Yeah.
It doesn't get much closer than that. So we should have a good relationship. And having that relationship right across the Pacific is exactly what we need to do to maintain our own mainland security.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. We talked about the mob view. And the mob view on this occasion is not helped by the parliament not having sat since the election, and that will not do so until the end of this month, nor the cavalcade of ministers who are also abroad at any given time, whether it's Penny Wong on her essential Pacific Blitz, Tanya Plibersek posting for selfies with Emmanuel Macron at an ocean summit in Portugal. Like, that was a big deal. Like, that Australia, like, she was there to say, hey, Australia's back on the climate thing. Let's go. And she got a standing ovation for that kind of shit, okay? That was not like Okay, I'm gonna continue. Or Richard Marles inexplicably posting pictures of himself on social media doing yoga in India. And I'm like, what else if you're gonna go to India, why is it inexplicable for you to post on social media for one thing, but to do like a almost quintessentially like Indian like thing? Because that would help you, and Indians love their social media, right? Help you ingratiate yourself with the Indian populace. Like, why is that bad? It costs you nothing to post pictures of you doing these activities if you're already there doing high-level talks and stuff. Why is this inexplicable?
This is part of the right-wing media agenda, where what they're doing right now is they're dog whistling to their followers who like to ascribe to the globalist conspiracy theories. That's what they're doing, right? So they're saying that we should be isolationists, we should be protectionists, and we should keep ourselves to our own country. So Plibisect helping to present that Australia is back on board when it comes to renewables, we're back on board when it comes to taking climate change action, has many, many benefits. our relationship with France needs to be repaired. So Anthony Albanese meeting with Macron, Plibisek being photoed with Macron, that's all part about rebuilding that damaged relationship. The opposite side to all of this, and this is something that people don't consider, all of these gestures allow us to have good relationships so we can further our trading ability. Being able to trade with other countries benefits our farmers, benefits manufacturing, benefits Australians, keeps jobs flowing. All of these things. Europe needs Australia more than it's ever needed Australia ever. And we can capitalize on that now. And we do that by having these strong relationships. But right wing media, especially Murdoch owned media, has used the term globalist, which is their code name for Jewish banker, to galvanize their shithead base into destroying every single Western country they come across. That is what has happened over in America. It certainly happened over in Britain, and they want to see it happen here. But by having these great relationships with other countries means that we have multiple trading opportunities, which means that Australia's economic presence in the world is a secure one and a one of growth and stable and on a stabilized base. That is what they're doing right now. Going across to the Ukraine is also a very good move, because once that is over, and that conflict will eventually be over, because the Russians, if they were going to win that conflict, if they would have won it by now. Right, it's well and truly past the point of no return for the Russians. Once that finishes, by us making our presence in Ukraine known, we will have, again, amazing tradability with the Ukraine. Because a lot of people forget about this. A lot of wheat that's used in Australian noodle products, for example, you know, your 2-minute packet of Maggi noodles, some of that wheat export, guess where it comes from? The Ukraine.
Yeah.
These sort of things help to stabilize our trading position with all of our partners. Trading positions that were significantly damaged under coalition leadership. It kind of went back up during the Turnbull era and then immediately plummeted during the Morrison era, where they managed to piss off every single fucking person. Even with that nuclear sub deal that we've now gone in with the Americans, the reason that the Turnbull government, now I don't think Australia needed subs regardless. I didn't like the original deal. I've said that before. That being said, the reason that Turnbull opted to go for diesel subs is because there's a shit ton of processing work that needs to be done with the nuclear waste produced by the nuclear reactors. Effectively, we're going to be leasing nuclear powered maintained submarines from the American government, which is something we don't want to do.
Yeah.
And in doing that, we also damaged our relationship with a substantial trading partner. So we're now having to repair that. But that's not how the Murdoch fucking flunkies like to present it, because they know that they can dog whistle this global elite of shit to their base, who are suffering because these same Murdoch flunkies are getting rich by keeping these people down and out when it comes to their economic status in this world. That's the fucking problem, and that's why their propaganda machine has to ramp up.
Yeah.
Fuck these people.
Yeah. So shit, I forgot what I was gonna say. There was the one thing about Rush, because you went on quite a tear there.
I did.
So with regards to Russia, us giving them more Bushmasters, I think is really, really cool. Because
you meant Ukraine, giving the
Ukraine.
Bushmasters.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, Russia and Ukraine. Giving Ukrainians the Bushmasters is really cool, because like I think a lot of the Ukrainians, like they had something on the ABC. They're interviewing like one of the Ukrainians who's driving a Bushmaster, and he's like, "These things are freaking awesome. I love these things." And it would be really cool to see them have a similar sort of like folk hero-esque sort thing that happens to them, similar to the Turkish Bayraktar drones, where they're singing songs about them in Ukraine, right? If Australian tech can be showcased in wars and in various places, that's really good for people, Australians, who make Bushmasters, because we will make more of them.
Yes.
And send them to like Europe and stuff like that. It's incredibly important that we do this kind of foreign relations stuff.
Absolutely.
So to complain about it here is insane to me. I forgot what else I was going to say, so we're just going to go jump back into this. The opposition. So he admits here that the opposition like fueled a lot of this fervor, right? The opposition wasted no time in helping along such sentiment with unsubtle references to Albanese being abroad while a crisis raged at home. There's 30,000 people who have been told to evacuate their homes, but the PM is more concerned about his reputation on the global stage, said Angus Taylor. Disingenuous, maybe, but something Labour, to a significant extent, brought on itself. Now he'll explain the reasoning, and I'm gonna summarize it in a bit, but let's go through his thought process here, okay? Its justified pursuit of Morrison holidaying in Hawaii while the East Coast was ablaze in late 2019 was so successful, it became the template for other similar attacks that were less warranted, but served ultimately to create unrealistic expectations of not just Morrison, but now of Albanese. Labour's killer campaign line about Morrison always going missing in times of trouble was bookended by the fires at the start of the term and the floods in northern New South Wales and southeast Queensland earlier this year. The Morrison government made political mistakes with the floods, which were of an unprecedented magnitude, but the central perception of Morrison not showing up fails to consider he contracted COVID-19 at the start of the disaster and had isolated incurability for 7 days. Now, him not being there at the floods wasn't the goddamn problem. And we'll get into this in a bit, okay? Like being present within the country. At the same time, Labour ran around the flood zone fomenting discontent against the absent Prime Minister. Perceptions of the then PM were so negative that Labour's tactic worked a treat and still does. Albanese had no need to mention the effort of former PM Scott Morrison, who arrived at the calamitous flood zone of Lismore, northern New South Wales, 9 days after water had swept away lives, houses, businesses, and livestock, while locals initially had to rely on their own resources to survive. Veteran scribe Tony Wright wrote in The Age on Thursday in an effusive piece about Albanese's flood visit. Now, what Phil Corey fails to mention in this quote, and what a lot of people noticed, was that when PM Scott Morrison, at the time, went down to Lismore, he used it as a photo op. He didn't go down to, like, certain places. He went into very specific places where, like, he kept other people out from seeing him.
Yep.
Right? And that's the difference. Albanese, when he visited the flood zones with Dominic Perrottet, wasn't doing that as much. He was going there and he was asking what people needed, and he was like, hey, yo, you want the money? We're opening up the flood relief stuff now. I remember that being a thing that was asked for during the floods when Scott Morrison was still Prime Minister. They're like, hey, are you going to open up that flood, like, disaster fund? Like, is that going to be a thing that you do? Isn't that what it's there for? Like, that was a thing. So him being present wasn't the issue on this second thing. Okay?
Yeah. Under the Morrison government, the disaster relief for the bushfires still has yet to be released. They still are working through that. And that happened fucking 3 years ago. On top of that as well, notice that Albanese is not afraid to be photographed with a state leader who's of a different fucking political party to him. Him and Perriott are there together, working through and asking people what they need. People aren't aggressively trying to punch Anthony Albanese in the head, whereas Morrison could barely get a fucking handshake. It's so shitty to do this, but we knew that they were going to do it. He's basically saying there, oh, look, an unfair standard was created, and so now the Labor Party has to make sure that they're at disasters all the time because that's the new standard. Good! If that is the new fucking standard for our political leadership, that they have to be present during these massive fucking catastrophes, which have been allowed to happen because the Murdoch media stopped all climate change action over the last 10 years, and now we're dealing with these disasters. If the new standard is that the fucking politicians have to be there on the ground, then good. That's exactly what the standard should be. We elect them to lead us.
Yeah, okay, Matt, chill. All right. Matt, I haven't even got to the end of this yet. Okay. Albanese's news conference under the plane wing on Tuesday was a telling moment in a telling week for the new government. Everything that seemed so easy from opposition became more difficult. as if they said it was going to be anything but okay. Just after the Prime Minister and the press re-embarked for the next leg of the trip to Sydney, the Reserve Bank of Australia lifted interest rates by another 0.5 of a percentage point. Treasurer Jim Chalmers, so vocal in opposition, like his predecessor, had no answers to what is a global scourge, other than to jabber about ridding the budget of rot and waste as if that will somehow help. Well, it's not going to hurt. Are you saying you shouldn't do fucking anything? That the rorts shouldn't be gotten rid of? Phil Corey? Like, what the fuck are you even saying here, dude? Okay. Jesus Christ. Okay, I'm just gonna... Matt, no, okay, we got to get through this, okay? By Wednesday morning, even the ABC in Melbourne was calling it out after Chalmers protested there was no easy solution and the government was playing the cards that had been dealt. Again, it was not a latitude the previous government had been afforded, and host Virginia Trioli cut off Chalmers at a certain point, and I think that point is right now. That line is going to start to wear thin, which is politically a fair enough observation to make. You can't be just saying, oh, it was the other guy's fault all the time. People's memories forget about the shittiness of the past, but that's fine. Everyone's going to turn to you and say, yeah, you wanted the job, you got the job, now you have to do it. Which is fine. Like, this is the only annoying thing about this is that we know that they're doing their jobs, and like he's going to release the budget. So to say this so preemptively, so quickly is, I think, a bit disingenuous. But it's fine, whatever. It's the news. It's people being people. That's the upshot of complaining. Okay, that's the upshot of complaining your way into office. The next test will unfold over coming days and weeks as COVID-19 begins to worsen again. Given how hopeless the last lot was, Phil Corey, I wonder if he posted how many articles he posted about how hopeless they were during their term. Probably not very many.
How many articles did he post saying Dan Andrews should have lifted lockdown earlier? Now he's suddenly we've got to do something about COVID.
Let's not think about that, Matt. Okay. Given how hopeless the last lot was, the mob will be expecting near perfection on that as well. So that whole tirade that you had before is summed up here in the stupidest way possible. Because it's like, not only is it that he admits that the Liberals were just fucking shit, but somehow because they were shit, they have... And by pointing out that they were shit, Labour have to be near perfect rather than just doing their job and doing what is expected of them. Right? This framing is fucking ridiculous. And this always happens to leftists when they get into power. It's like, okay, you have to now be the angel or else you're just as bad as the other guys who were demonstrably worse. Yes. Like, it's just...
They're basically saying, oh, you know what? You got elected because you said the standards weren't being upheld. So guess what? Now you're going to have to uphold the standards. Yes, they are. They are going to have to uphold the standards. Good.
Yeah, that's fine. Like, the framing isn't that it's adhering to the standards. He's saying they have to be the mob, as in he and everyone else apparently is expecting near perfection. And then that's different to the standard, right?
I also love, though, I do love here, Tommy, how at the same time he is saying that, he's creating an economic distance between himself being probably a very wealthy person and the rest of us, which are a mob.
They do that a lot.
They do. Like I'm sorry, like I'm going to target right-wing media consumers here. Why do you continue to read something that obviously hates you?
Yeah.
Like, they hate you. They call you a mob. Why would you listen to them in the first place? They're like, you're too fucking stupid. And look what you've done, you stupid fucking idiots. And they're going to have to pander to you because you're dumb fucking idiots. Anyway, continue to binge watch our fucking content. Like, what? why right-wing media consumers? Why do you do this to yourselves? You're in an abusive relationship. They're just slapping you around all the time.
Yeah, but they're slapping the minorities worse, so I guess that's fine. Anyway, to wrap this up, one last thing that I'll address that I haven't yet was this line. That's the upshot of complaining your way into the office. So that's an interesting way to frame it, because unlike the current opposition, when the Labour Party were in opposition, they voted for certain bills that the coalition proposed, like Job Seeker, JobKeeper, that kind of shit, right? They didn't complain about it. They didn't just complain about it. Like, yeah, fuck it, we'll support that bill. It's fine. It'll keep people in jobs. It's better than nothing. We'll vote for it, rather than just complaining about it. So again, this assertion is fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
So Phil Corey, you can go fuck himself, dude. This is fucking dog shit. This whole fucking article. And there was another one. Just we won't read it, but it's very strange. It's a similar tone, but it attacks both sides in a very strange way. Now is the hour for Albanese, small target man, to grow in stature. But it spends most of the time just attacking Labour and doing these like really weird, like Zoomer-esque, but not really sort of lines. I recommend you read it. It's a bizarre thing. It's a roller coaster of like, what the fuck is happening? Rather than just the pure hatred and vitriol that came from this. But yeah, this was quite. It's a similar thing as like, oh, I expect these guys to be the best things ever. And it's like,
well,
okay, did you hold the same standard before? Like, what is happening here, dude?
I just love that we live in a world where you can have the right-wing media pundits essentially tell their consumers that they're fuckwits. You get to keep your job. You're more popular than ever. And you probably get to go home to your mansion whistling, going, ha ha ha, how fucking stupid are people that I get to do this for a living?
Yeah, okay, so I'll just read one paragraph. Okay, this one I was like, what the fuck? Okay, so it goes, Labour wasn't elected to stay small or to do the easy things. It was elected on exactly, like, if you're whinging about Labour being small target, they were elected for their small target. Okay, they won government based on that rhetoric. Okay, so this is already very questionable grounds. This sentence. Okay, Labour was elected quite specifically, apparently, to grasp the challenges that have been too hard for the last decade's worth of governments. It wasn't hard. I mean, it was hard, but for them, that was more neglect than anything else. Albanese wasn't elected to give us relief and reassurance that we have a decent and honest man in charge, although that might be pleasant side benefit. He was elected to win important fights for Australia's future.
Like going overseas and shoring up good relationships with our trading partners.
Yeah,
and
like it's...
shoring up good relationships with our Asia Pacific partners so that we have a nice, secure region. That's what he's doing.
There is nothing that he said in his election that he hasn't followed through on or is looking to be doing to implement. Like nothing. He's like, oh yeah, we're gonna do. We want better parliament. Yo, we're gonna do the Jenkins review. We're gonna implement that kind of shit. I want to get rid of that stuff that Christian Porter abused. We're getting rid of that. So he's doing all this stuff. So I don't know why these fucking articles are coming out saying, oh yeah, now you have to do the thing that you said. It's like, why are you saying that it as if they're not though?
You know why, Tommy? Because they're not journalists. They're entertainers. And they're entertaining people who have been sucked into the right wing of politics. And that's what their job is. Their job is to just piss out the schlock to get their right wing base galvanized so they continue to consume their product so they can sell advertising. This is just corporate bullshit at its worst. This is just, corporate bullshit at its worst. I've been inside the belly of the beast with Fairfax Media. It is relatively the same. Produce content so they can sell ads. These people are not journalists. These people are not, there's no integrity. They are just Murdoch flunkies whose mortgages get paid by writing this drivel so that the Murdoch press can attach ads to it to make their billionaires wealthier. It's just an example of billionaires making millionaires and millionaires making people comfortable, in their lives. That's all this is. These people have no integrity. They never will. They're just producing right-wing entertainment. That's all they're doing.
Yeah. Okay.
There's no honesty here. There's nothing to be gleaned in that.
There's probably some other things that we wanted to cover, but I think we're running short on time. So I put this in the title, so we have to cover it. So the last thing that we're going to cover today is Clive Palmer's $100 million senator revealing his political agenda. Matt, you're going to fucking love this dude, okay?
He's going to be can't wait. I've been waiting for this.
A goddamn hero of yours, all right? New Victorian Senator Ralph Babbitt will use his time in federal parliament to fight for a 2-term limit for MPs, a Bill of Rights and stronger privacy laws, but is opposed to stronger action on climate change. The sole United Australia Party MP to emerge from mining magnate Clive Palmer's estimated $100 million advertising spend during the recent federal election, Babbitt is a French-speaking, pro-immigration real estate agent. That's always a good sign. Born in the Indian Ocean nation of Mauritius. In an interview with The Age and Sydney Morning Herald, the 39-year-old UAP senator laid out his priorities for his time in Parliament, which he declared will only last one term. $100 million well spent. He wants MPs limited to serving 2 terms. After 2 terms, what's gonna happen? You're gonna become stale. You're gonna become disconnected, Babbitt said. Like his political hero, the Libertarian Republican former U.S. Congressman Ron Paul, Babbitt supports a fiscally disciplined government constrained by constitutional freedoms. We need a Bill of Rights which encompasses all of those things to protect us, not only from foreign tech giants, but to stop governments restricting the ability to assemble in public, the ability to freely move around your country without being stopped for any reason at all. I wonder where that comes from. This is the Victorian senator.
That'd come from Craig Kelly, wouldn't it?
Babbitt, who arrived in Australia at the age of 7 and lives in Melbourne's outer southeast, said his passion for the natural world led him to voting for the Greens. Back then, I thought the Greens were only about the environment, Babbitt said. But he grew disenchanted with what he saw as the party's radical social policies and is skeptical of the scientific consensus that humans are causing dangerous climate change. So much for loving that environment, but all right, dude. I don't believe that the science is settled, Babbitt said. Instead, Babbitt, who is a Catholic, was drawn to the UAP for its unabashed, unashamed love of country. Australia should take more migrants, he said, but only as long as they are willing to assimilate into local culture. Now, I have a whole massive tirade about that, but we'll leave that for another day. Babbitt attended controversial protests at the Victorian Parliament where activists tried to stop the state government's COVID-19 legislation and mandates. The protests drew criticism for their use of violent language and imagery and from those who saw the gatherings as irresponsible during the pandemic. I was out there on the steps of Parliament House non-stop for a couple of weeks in a row, said Babbitt, every single night. His priority in Canberra is to represent the so-called freedom movement. You remember these guys, Matt? A loose coalition of activists opposed to things like vaccine mandates and harsh lockdowns to tackle the coronavirus pandemic. I want to get the average mum and dad, the average Australian, off the couch because I believe that most Australians have a she'll be right attitude about most things. That is not a great attitude to have when you're in government, dude. But all right.
Don't worry about it, mate. She'll be right.
She'll be right.
Especially, right, mate.
Especially about politics, Babbitt said. They don't care about politics, but they need to care. Wait, what? They need to take... What? They don't care about politics, but they need to care. They need to take an interest. But you want to instill with them a she'll be right attitude. Especially politics, dude. What the fuck? Okay. Babbitt, who has had all my shots except for coronavirus vaccines, said he felt like a leper during the period when mandates were being strictly enforced, in contrast to Babbitt's unfounded description of coronavirus vaccines as emergency use gene therapy. COVID-19 vaccines have been approved by health authorities, blah, blah. He is skeptical, too, of the World Economic Forum. I mean, that's fine. An organization best known for its annual talk fest attended by rich As far as I can see, they're trying to do away with the concept of private ownership, said Babbitt. What? Okay. Babbitt said, who is fearful large corporations want to instead own almost everything. I mean, the World Health Organization helps, but okay, whatever. Babbitt's vote is unlikely to be pivotal in this term of parliament because Labour needs the support of the Greens and only one other crossbencher to get legislation through the Senate. That crossbench support is... Can you imagine if they actually got support from this guy about on anything? It'd be amazing. That crossbench support is more likely to come from the ACT independent David Pocock, or Jackie Lambie Network from Tasmania, both of which are more ideologically aligned with the government. The incoming UAP senator gave a dim assessment of Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, saying it was hard to judge him because he had spent so little time in Australia since ascending to the role. Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, don't judge him on, like, all of the other time that he spent in Parliament, dude. Albanese has travelled extensively since becoming Prime Minister on government business, such as meeting NATO, blah, blah, blah. But Babbitt has even more scathing of Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews, pointing to Melbourne's unenviable status as one of the most locked down cities in the world. If he was the CEO of any business, he would have been sacked, Babbitt said. He needs to go. Why are you not a state politician, my dude? United Australia Party received about 4% of the first preference in Victorian Senate. And that, okay, we're just talking about the stuff there. But, yeah, champion of the people, Matt, especially you. I know you'd love this guy, this Catholic dude who believes in private ownership, freedom of movement, freedom, dictate it down, etc., etc. He's a senator. $100 million gets you that guy.
Yep.
Into the Senate.
Clive.
Mate.
Look, Jesus, man. Like, look, if you got $100 million to kick around, give me 10, give Tommy 10. I can grab a couple other people. We'll help you get into power. You know, but we'll be good politicians for you if you're willing to kick around $100 million to elect this fuckhead. It's one of those things where, like, I'll admit I've made mistakes in the past. I used to define my political stance as somewhat libertarian. I'm now embarrassed by those comments that I used to refer to myself in that way because I'm a center left sort of guy, and I obviously had my my politics a bit skewy when I was describing myself as more of a libertarian.
I can
This guy
understand
is
if
a
you're looking at
classic
classical
libertarian where
libertarianism.
they are
fine.
so full of contradictions. You know, I'm a conservative Catholic, but I believe in freedom of movement. I like immigration, but they need to assimilate. But this, but that, but this, but that. It's like, I like the rules that apply to people who I don't like. I don't like the rules that apply to me that I do like. Classic libertarian. And you know, has openly said, I'm only going to do this for like 3 years and then I'm fucking off. That's what 100.
One
Sorry.
term. I mean, 3 years is correct, but yeah, one.
Yeah, one term. You know, so I love that for $100 million, you can get this shithead who doesn't know whether he's coming or going, and he's actively said, "Yeah, I'm fucking off after I get my pension secured from the federal government."
He's going to spend
Fucking
all his
wonderful.
time trying to get a 2-term limit for MPs passed.
Yep.
Somehow.
Do it, my man. You get things done. You get things done.
Get it done, my dude.
Clivey, $100 million, mate. Stop it. But $100 million, mate. Go build a super yacht. Go make a giant plane. Do that thing that you wanted to do. Build the Titanic that you're really excited about. There was
so
a
much
point
cool
you wanted
shit he could have
to
built with
clone
that, right?
dinosaurs and make a real Jurassic. Do the Jurassic Park thing. I'll go and see your weird dinosaurs that you genetically engineer. I will.
Yeah, I can confirm Matt would
that's a great
absolutely do
idea.
that. I'm not going anywhere near fucking Jurassic Park. Fuck that shit. I've seen enough of those fucking movies.
You know, he'll get his investment back until whatever the fuck he makes with frog DNA escapes and eats a bunch of tourists. And then he'll say it's the tourists' fault anyway because they all got vaccinated and that's what the dinosaurs were going after. You know, that there's $100 million. Build a giant golden statue to yourself on an island, Clivey. Like, you're just wasting your money, mate. That's the Build a giant roller coaster that goes to nowhere. Build a spaceship. You know, set up the world's biggest orgy. I mean, $100 million, you could do all of that. You don't need this in your life, mate.
Or you would have been very productive, I reckon.
You know, like pay 100 people $1 million to rub sensual oils into your giant tummy. Like there's better things to spend $100 million
So yeah, if
on.
you had 100 million, you could pay someone to do that for you for like the rest of your life.
Yeah, Tommy will do it. Oh, there you go, Tommy. There's a hundred.
I mean, for 100 mil.
I mean,
Nah, but I'm too like money. I'm not that concerned about money. I like.
yeah,
But you know, you can get there'll be like Matt will probably do that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm willing to rub sensual oils into his belly
I
while
mean,
he
it is
giggles like a
100 mil
schoolgirl.
for the rest of your lifetime, Matt, to rub oil on
Yeah.
Clive Palmer.
He doesn't have that long to live. It's not going to be the rest of my lifetime.
It's a bargain. It's a bargain on your behalf.
It's not going to worry me in the slightest. If anyone is curious as to the origins of Clive Palmer, the reason that he formed the UAP in the first place is because he didn't like the fact that lobbyists could undercut him in Canberra. And he said to Tony Abbott, he goes, I want fair and equal representation for lobbyists, because he was sick of them being able to get in ahead of him, depending on their financial support to the Liberal Party. And Tony Abbott said, no, fuck off. And so Clive Palmer got a bee in his bonnet and was like, well, fuck you, I'm going to form my own political party. And at a certain point, he courted Malcolm Turnbull to run it. That's where this all started. And now he's just so locked into it that he has to kick out all of this money. I mean, Craig Kelly thought he was gonna. I don't know whether this is true or not. I think Craig Kelly is an amazing charlatan who knows how to milk people for money. I think he's just a professional fucking charlatan. But I'm pretty sure that like Craig Kelly was able to you know, like he kept saying that the UAP was going to make him the next Prime Minister of Australia and that could happen. And I mean, Craig Kelly knows the political system and he knew that that was never a possibility, but he said it anyway. So, you know, I don't know what Clive is spending his money on, but fuck, man, like there are probably people who would work for the UAP who are far more competent and would cost you far less to get elected. And I don't understand why Clivey has all of these resources which are nearly bottomless, and he keeps aligning himself with these people. Like if he just wants to have a decent lobbying presence in Parliament, take that 100 million and donate it to the political parties you like. That's going to get you far more representation for your business concerns than what these guys are going to do. Clivey, what are you doing, mate?
Well,
Build
look,
your
that's the thing is like
dinosaur
when you're that goddamn rich, like that 100 mil is almost meaningless. That's what that's sad about that, right? Like to us,
Yeah.
life-changing amount of money. But for them, it's like I'll
Yeah.
just piss it away on fucking ads and get this Catholic libertarian into the Senate.
Build a children's hospital and put a big fucking statue of you out the front of it. No one would complain about that.
That's too much of a normal thing to do, Matt. These are eccentric billionaires. Remember, Clive Palmer was the guy who twerked at a radio interview or whatever.
Ugh.
Yeah, remember that? Yeah, remember that? That was
I'd
2
forgotten about
elections.
it,
That
but
was 2
apparently you
elections
just
ago,
reminded
motherfucker.
me.
All right, Matt. We've had fun. This was a fun one.
It was a good one.
So yeah, why don't you plug your stuff and we'll get the fuck out of here.
So if you want to hear more from me, myself and my wife Holly Soul, we produce a podcast every week called the Weird Crap in Australia podcast, where we go through all the most interesting aspects of Australian social history. We've talked about alien abductions, the federalisation of Australia, We've discussed some crazy monsters, you name it. We've talked about a lot of stuff on the Weird Crap in Australia podcast. New episodes come out every Monday. We've also got a new book coming out, Weird Crap in Australia Volume 3, which is landing in bookstores. Well, one bookstore in particular being Impact Comics. That's going to be coming out in September. Weird Crap in Australia Volume 1 and 2 are available now. You can grab those from impactcomics.com.au, lulu.com. And if you're keen for just a ebook edition, you can grab those from the Kindle shop. I'm also going to be at GammaCon in July 23rd, 24. We're going to be doing Weird Crap in Australia live. We're also going to be available for autographs, photographs, just general chit chat about all sorts of Australian history. So we're going to be there for that entire weekend. Looking forward to going out and meeting everyone. My graphic novel, Killaroo, Semper Fi, if you're interested in seeing some of my fictional work, you can head to killaroo.com, pick yourself up a copy of that, or support your local comic book store. There are books out there all over Australia with my name on it at your local comic book store. Just go in and ask them about Killaroo and they'll be able to help you out.
Matt said he's got his name on it, so you need to ask about, I want Matthew Soul's books.
Yeah, just say, I want Matt Soul books. And if they say, I don't know what that is, say, well, you should find out and I'll buy it from you.
Yep,
and then
exactly.
boom.
That's it.
That's how it all works. So you can check out all of that content that I produce each week. You can also catch up with me on Facebook, Weird Crap in Australia, same as Instagram, and on Twitter. My handle is at Weird Crap in Oz, AUS. So shoot me a like and we'll have a chat.
Nice. Okay. Matt and I have changing work schedules that we will need to figure out at some point. Next week, I think we're still good to go.
Yep, still normal
same time
next week.
Otherwise, so next week we'll be back at the same time. Then after that, who knows? I'll tweet it out or something. I'll probably do maybe a YouTube community post about it on the change of schedule, or maybe by next week we'll know and I'll be able to tell you. This probably seems reasonable. But anyway, thanks for watching, everyone out there. Stay safe in this crazy world that we live in.
Absolutely,
guys. Next week.
And check out Tommy's YouTube channel where he talks about video games. Got him.
Shut up, Matt.
You need someone to promote